All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us or tuning in for another edition of our virtual Heritage Wilmot meetings. Welcome to everyone who's viewing online, either live or afterwards as well. Second item on the agenda is moving to the land acknowledgement. Councillor Fenning, would you like to share that with the group?
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you very much, Jen. Moving to disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Does anyone have any pecuniary interest to disclose? Seeing none, we can move on to review of the minutes from our last meeting. Any comments, questions, omissions, additions? If not, can I have a motion to approve? Al, and second? I think Patty, you were first. All in favor? So that's carried. Thanks, everyone. Moving on to business. First item we had on here is the non-designated register inventory. Wanted to just talk about final coordination. I know that the letters have all been sent out to the different property owners, and as I mentioned last meeting, there was one who did not want to be included in the list. Tracy, I think you had discussions with perhaps one or two others. Did you want to update the group on that?
Certainly. So besides the one from last meeting, there's just one other that expressed interest also not to be included. I've had one or two conversations. They're just collecting information on what it means. And again, it's just like every year when we do this, people confuse the designated and non-designated and what it means. So I'm having one more conversation, then I'll be able to conclude if this property owner would like to stay on the list or not, which then I can update the committee.
Okay. And I know we talked about last meeting what the I guess protocol is for if someone does not want to be included, and also in relation to notice to be given before or after. And I know there's changes to the Heritage Act coming where notice is required before a property gets added, but as of right now, notice just has to be provided after it's added instead of before. We provide it before anyway, just to be transparent. And then it's just a decision to make whether or not, if there's one or two or three property owners who don't want to be included on the list, if we should maybe break them out separately in Tracy's staff report. I mean, it's ultimately up to council to decide. We can recommend as our committee too what we think should occur. So I didn't know if anyone had any thoughts on that. Tracy, is that something you guys have discussed internally as well, about how your report might look? Or
so typically the report that accompanies the non-designated, I would give an overview on the properties the committee has chosen. The report would speak to the assessment that was done to meet the criteria, whether it's worthy to be included on the list, and then it would also include if there's any objections.
And typically, if there's an objection, in the past we haven't added it to the list.
To date, there has been one that I would recall, and it wasn't added. It was the first time the committee really had ever approached this.
Okay. Jen, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, Tracy or Nick or anybody, because the non-designated register doesn't impact the owner's ability to do whatever they want with the property, really, other than tear it down. What objections have been raised?
Do you want me to answer, Nick?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. So the one that years and years and years ago that we had removed or did not include in the beginning, it was just simply, I don't want to be included. And I don't know, Marg, if you recall I just know I had a conversation with the gentleman and he just simply said, I don't want to be included. And I don't know if you can add to that one at all.
Was that the fellow in Phillipsburg?
Phillipsburg House, that's correct. And then we decided
right.
we would reapproach the property owner once perhaps change of hands in ownership.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't ever recall him giving a specific. Do you?
No,
Yeah.
He didn't.
And oddly enough, so the two that I'm speaking with right now, I actually don't have a concrete answer, and that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up with the committee on. If I'm giving a report to council, presenting, the list and the two that would, if they would like to, and I've been very open with them on, their properties would be noted in my report, and council will ask why, and just saying, simply because I don't want to be on the list. There needs to be a little bit more of a response or a reason why. So that's why I was hoping this committee could discuss or come to a consensus that helps give me direction with my report to support the register as a whole.
Okay.
Tracy, I thought it was Kara's on consulting or that family thing. I didn't think they wanted to be on. That was the former Wilmot Senior Public School at corner of Sand Hills and Herb.
Yeah, and that was the gentleman I'd spoken with as well. Tracy, I don't know if you talked to them, and they just said they didn't want to be identified as a heritage property.
Right.
I think it was the sense of possible restrictions on the building, but they didn't really say. They just said they didn't want to be identified.
What about the school on Christner? Because when Yvonne and I went to see him, he was adamant that he would not be on that. What has he said since?
Yvonne, I see your hands up. Jen, I didn't know if you had anything on that topic.
I think Jen was going to respond to that. So go ahead, Jen.
So I had a call from the property owner, and I'm scratching my head a little bit. I'm not sure how the conversation, and maybe there was a misunderstanding, but I had a call from the property owner saying that he'd received the letter and that he was perfectly happy to be on the non-designated register, and that as I know, because when they were first moved in there, I'd stopped by and talked with them, and they said, they had some really great plans for the property. They want to preserve it. They want to do some renovations and such that, if they were designated, might be a little bit more difficult, but on the non-designated, it's not going to pose any issue for them. So perhaps their understanding when you were there was not quite accurate. I can only guess. But anyways, it was an unsolicited phone call. He picked up the phone to call and tell me that he was perfectly happy to be on the register.
Oh, good. Because that's certainly not what he said to us when we went to talk to him.
And if I can jump.
There was a misunderstanding.
Yeah, maybe.
How could there have been? We were totally clear about what this was all about. Yvonne and I are really good at that,
Actually, I'd like to address that. And this is one of my concerns about this, that someone misinterpreting the intentions and it happening so easily, and their decision to be on or not on the non-designated list can be so easily swayed, depending on how it's presented to them. So I have concerns that because this is the township's list, okay, that we are putting properties within the township on the township's list to recognize the value to the township. My concern is that if someone is having a bad hair day, or they don't like Marg or me, which we left very quickly, let's put it that way. I'm concerned that whether a property is added or not added to the list can be so easily affected. That's something that we need to really think about, and whether the person's frame of mind can affect the township's list.
That's a good point, Yvonne. I'm wondering if maybe a good approach is if we can just make it clear in the report that Tracy would bring forward, talking about that, you know, just characterizing how the notice has been out, and these are the people we'd heard from, and if there are ones who didn't want to be included, and we can conclude whether or not we think they should be on, and then it's really up to council to decide if they should be on or not. Jen, I saw you had your hand up, and then Al, I think you too.
I'm okay if Al goes ahead, because okay. One of the things I was going to ask was, you know, I'm pretty new to this committee, and so I'd really like to hear everybody's perspective on it.
So, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good. Wasn't sure if I was muted or unmuted. I always get that messed up. Anyway, I've always felt that if someone says no, even if it's for the flimsiest of reasons from our perspective, it may not be from their perspective. And I think if someone says they don't want to be on the list, in the past few instances, we haven't put them on the list. And I think that's probably a procedure I think we should continue. You want to be positive. You don't want to create an incident where you're fighting a battle and it really isn't a battle that's worth fighting at that stage. So we're probably more somewhere down the road, hopefully never, a battle that really needs to be fought, where someone saying, I don't want to be on the list is probably a battle we should avoid. Now, if it came to designating a property, you know, if that issue came up, that would be a different story. But if someone, for whatever reason, feels they don't want to be on the list, I think that we should respect their wishes and not put them on the list. There was one property, I believe, across from the high school that did not go on the list and is now going to go on the list because the ownership has changed. So that's always a possibility. But again, I'll just reiterate, I think that if they say no, we should respect their wishes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Whatever happened to that church that didn't want to be on the list? Remember the one in New Hamburg? I've forgotten what the name of it is or the address, but there was one church who said they didn't want to be on, but maybe later on. Do you remember that one?
It's the one on Jacob Street.
That's right. That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
We did the research, and then they are not on the list. B, is the non-designated list not the first step or one of the first steps leading to designation? And skipping that because an individual doesn't like the idea of being on the list does that not devalue the entire list?
No.
And the steps we are taking to protect the buildings. I just need to understand this, and so I'm putting it out there.
It is often the first step to take. It doesn't have to be, though. We can bring a property forward to be designated without being on the list. I think often.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, actually, I think the way the township has done it, Alan, and I think we may have discussed this when we put one of the churches up to designating, is that the property goes from the non-designated list to the designated list. And I think that's how it's typically gone in the past, but it doesn't have to be that way.
In the past, as far as I can recall, from all the designations I've been involved in, the building has been on the list. We've never designated a property that is not part of our inventory list that I'm aware of. There were a few.
So it's skipping, so having properties not on the list when we have the majority of the properties that are recognized as having historical value, skipping that because someone doesn't like it. Aren't we doing the township a disservice by doing this?
If I can respond to that, in the case, I think, of where a property isn't on the list, it can be added, and it's usually a result, in most cases, of somebody coming and approaching us, showing an interest. And if we find that, for whatever reason, the reason we're doing these annual reviews is to get more properties on our list, but our list was a lot shorter than it is now. And properties were missed, and there still are properties that aren't on the list that should be. Like, we know that. That's why this is an ongoing project. So if something isn't on there and it comes to our attention, the owner is interested, we can always evaluate the property to see if it merits, and it could be added to the list and then designated.
Mm-hmm. Jen, I saw you had your hand up. And Tracy, I see you do too.
So from what I'm hearing, and I see Patty's got her hand, she's itching to say something maybe, and I'm okay to wait because I've spoken already. So Patty, if you wanted to go ahead, I'll wait till you're done.
Thanks. So I don't totally agree that we should. This is just a list that we come up with of buildings that we feel are worthy of designation. It's to leave one school off, for example, is unattractive. That may have been something that just. Are we talking about North Wilmot? Which is the school here that is objecting? Like, it's one thing if it's someone's residence, but a building like I'm not sure I agree that this is just a list we make, and I kind of think that it's quite reasonable to just go ahead with it, and I can't see that because it has no real repercussions to the owner. That's just thinking. I'm not not strongly, but I don't really see Al. I don't see the it's good we send out information about it, but I don't know that we need an approval. So I'm on the other side. I'm the devil's advocate here.
Tracy, did you have something?
Funny you say devil's advocate, Patty. I was going to say, just to play devil's advocate.
Oh yeah,
I really was. That was my opening line. And I just wanted to just throw it out as I was kind of thinking ahead. So for instance, if the committee chose not to include a property from like a property owner that, and we go ahead and say down the road, the property is demolished. I just look at the committee on, would there be any regrets or anything from our perspective on our doing our due diligence from that. And if that's okay, that's okay. I just wanted to just throw out the other side on what could happen if it wasn't. And, depend on if it's a significant property, Wilmot Township as well, there's demolitions that are occurring. There's all sorts of things. And just, I look back to like mandate of the committee. But you're right. It's there's conversations for both sides, but just looking for consensus.
Artem.
Yeah, I think not to pass the baton, so to speak, but at the very least, I think we should let council decide if these properties should be added or not. Kind of give them a recommendation from us saying this is what they are. The property owners don't want to be, but in the interest of what we do here, they should be added.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Jen.
So I, I'm obviously very much respectful of people's wishes regarding their properties. But when we're talking about a list, a non-designated list, it has no day-to-day impact for them. It doesn't restrict them in any way. And on the flip side, if we don't inventory accurately what exists, it's easier to lose it. And, I look back to conversations since I started on this committee a couple of years ago, where it goes around the table and people are asking, wasn't there something? And, and the records aren't always there. And the memories, slip because people are either gone out of the community or pass away, and we lose the knowledge of what has been here. And to me, I look at Canada's a pretty young country, and most of the buildings around here are not what anybody in Europe would consider historical in any way. But we will never have anything that is if we don't preserve it now, if we don't identify it now. And so to me, the concept of not including a property without a really significant reason just strikes me as not doing our due diligence and not doing the job that we're here for, to preserve things for the future. And it's a different thing if there were strings attached where they couldn't do what they wanted with their property. But to inventory it and at least acknowledge that it exists and how it exists today and what we know about it now, that's preserving it for the future. That's preserving it for my grandchildren and your grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and so on, so that they know what has been here, even if it does end up being altered or torn down. We know what has been here. And so I support including them unless there's a really significant issue, like somebody's security might be put at risk. I don't know. I don't know what a truly significant reason would be, but I do think that it's of value to put them on the list and acknowledge their existence and have it be an inventory.
Mm-hmm. Alicia, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I really agree with that kind of consensus that it's an inventory list, and I think it is a process of due diligence that if we don't keep them on there, we don't acknowledge them, then we're losing that, and that's part of what we're doing at the Heritage Committee, is to really take notice of that and to make that a valuable point. So I would agree that putting it on the list is sort of more important than having people be against it just because it's something. I think mostly a lot of it is to do with people not really knowing the difference between the non-designated and the designated.
That's a good point. Tracy.
I just wanted to add, following up, Jen, when you're asking about reasons why people would not, and because you're newer to this committee, and there has been reasons that the committee has supported a demolition. So if a structure was at risk, or the cost to repair, those kind of things. So structural issues, this committee has talked about for different properties. So we certainly do take that into consideration as well.
Okay.
I think Yvonne had her hand up.
Oh, hey, Yvonne.
I just wanted to, I've just looked up the definition of inventory, and it means listing all. So if we're not listing all and the intent is not to list all, then we have to call it something else. Because by the very definition of inventory, if we are excusing, right, then it's not an inventory anymore.
Artem.
Yeah, another thing is if we're not including on the non-designated, in the back, we're still kind of keeping them on our list. So there's basically a third list of properties that non-designated. You know, it's not official list or anything, but it's, at the end of the day, we're going to be running a third list.
That's true too. So I'm wondering where that leaves us. Oh, Jen?
Artem's comment there just made me wonder, you know, again, I don't have the length of history that most of you do. When is that, I'm guessing that's where the idea of a non-designated list came from, was that property owners who weren't ready to have their properties designated, there is still a need to identify them and keep track of them. So I'm imagining that that's how the non-designated list came about.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair characterization of it. I think it was just that it was properties that were of interest, but not ready to be designated for whatever reason. Tracy.
I was going to mention one of the other benefits of this list, which I love, is so with the properties that were added that were deemed of cultural heritage value, and you see this big PDF that we have on our website, it's not uncommon for me to receive emails from people from all over that when they are Googling and they find like properties that belong to their family, they could be living in a completely different country, and they see our list and they know it was identified of some kind of significance culturally to Wilmot Township. And it is kind of neat from that perspective on it was identified. We chose your family property or what have you, that it was deemed significant enough to meet our criteria and to make the list. So I kind of see the benefit of from a, I guess a little bit of a genealogy part too as well.
Great.
I'm wondering if we need a motion maybe of how to handle properties that are, if the property owner doesn't want to be added to the list.
I would suggest, yeah, I think it'd be good to do a motion. I'm just counting up people to make sure that.
I'm just trying to think of wording, maybe something about that. They be identified in the staff report, and I guess that the piece would just be what the committee feels should be done with them if the property owner doesn't want to be added, and then what that recommendation looks like to council. Tracy?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, we could mention that, like in staff report, we would identify the property owners that chose not to, that we recognize it. And if the committee was still in agreement to still include them, but we also are mentioning that we are aware that they've reached out to express that they did not want to. Also thinking there could be, from a communication point of view from our committee, where we do quite well on, and I know we always go above and beyond on education and personal phone calls or explaining the difference in the confusion that people get between designated and non-designated on maybe having like an official form. I know some other municipal heritage committees are using a form that property owners could fill out and they could tell us exactly the reason why. Just throwing out some other ideas that we could do to make sure we're continuing the education part and keeping open dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea that we could explore too. Anyone want to put forward a motion?
I just wanted to quickly say as well that when this is put out there, we are inviting people to be added to the list, correct? That's how we approach it. And I guess this is one of the things that would then be changed in that it would then be, congratulations, you're going to be on this list. Because, I mean, it is the list that for the township that's being created. And then I guess instead of saying, do you want to be, we would be saying, your property will be on the list. If you have grave concerns, can you please spell them out, right? So the approach is going to change in how it's presented, right?
I can't recall the wording offhand.
Yeah.
Oh, Tracy?
I can. I just brought up, we actually, we tell them that they've been selected, and I'm just going to, so it's like, dear property owner, the Heritage Wilmot Advisory Committee is pleased to inform you that your property has been recognized as being historically or architecturally significant by the Township of Wilmot's Heritage Committee. Accordingly, your distinguished property has been chosen by the committee to be included in the updated Heritage Register of non-designated properties. The Heritage Register is governed by a section of the Ontario Heritage Act that allows municipal council to identify a list of properties they believe to be of cultural heritage value or interest. It's important to note that the inclusion of your property on the Heritage Register does not imply any official heritage designation. Your property is simply recognized by Wilmot Council as holding cultural and/or heritage value. There are no additional restrictions governing alterations to your property, but should you wish to demolish your property, the township requires 60 days notice under the Ontario Heritage Act. Inclusion does not preclude you from pursuing an official heritage designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, should you be interested. A brochure has been included with additional information regarding the Heritage Register, as well as property designation under the OHA. The Heritage Wilmot Advisory Committee is pleased to work with heritage property owners on behalf of Wilmot Council. So do you have any questions or concerns regarding this recognition and or inclusion, please feel free to contact us. So it's a more you've been selected. We also open up to, hey, if you'd like to be designated, here's some more, a brochure. We try to do very friendly approaches. So sorry, I don't think it would change. Yvonne, to answer your question, it still would be dependent on how the committee feels. It would still probably be worded that way on.
It sounds like it sounds good. It doesn't,
Okay.
I don't, okay. I guess we're speaking to the choir, right?
Yeah.
As long as it sounds okay. I know when we look at it every year and you'll find something and tweak it, but.
So what if you had a motion that was just jotting down wording as we were talking, that Heritage Wilmot supports language in the staff report indicating which property owners do not agree with being added to the register, and that council make an ultimate decision on a recommendation, something like that. Any thoughts, Jen?
I just, I'm wondering, and maybe this isn't a concern, but if we note that a property owner didn't want it, would that make them feel like if that's sort of stated publicly, is that going to make the person feel singled out? And, you know, like, we should definitely note their objection to it and, you know, keep track of that. But I just wonder if there's a way that we can do that without sort of creating a situation where they feel like everybody's fingers are pointing at them. I don't know.
I think because we're talking about the properties, it should be the property owner of, and then you can identify the property rather than saying this is the property owner. Just name them as the property owner, and then the property itself is what identifies them. Because when that changes, that's when we've, like in the past, where we've said, okay, new property owner will approach them again, right? Rather than identifying the person publicly.
Just to answer Jen's point, that's the point that I made initially, is that if someone says no, we need to respect that, even though I agree that we need to have as many building, as many legitimate properties on our list as possible. If someone says no, and you go ahead and put them on the list anyway, they're going to say, well, I said no, and why did they not listen to me? And you are identifying them then. If you put in the report that this person said no, but we're going to put them on anyway. So, I mean, all the points about making the list as broad as possible, I agree with. But when someone says no, they have a reason for saying no, and you need to respect that reason. And you don't want to cause a big kerfuffle,
Yeah,
which could impact on future additions to the list, because people will misinterpret. All of our best intentions, some people will still misinterpret what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
And if they do, they do. That's just the way they are.
Any other thoughts? Jen?
Perhaps the way to avoid having it create that negativity and still have a comprehensive list is to include the properties and note that several of the properties, or one of the properties, or whatever, the owner was not happy to be on the list, but that for purposes of a comprehensive inventory being kept, the property is included in the list, and not identify which property it was that declined or resisted being on the list. That would remove the sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, stigma attaching to a known person based on saying they live at that address. And I think it sort of mitigates the negativity while maintaining the integrity of the list.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Mark?
Thank you. I'm in agreement with Al. I think if a person says, I don't want to be on the list, it creates hard feelings, and they shouldn't be on that list. And that's it. You don't put them on because they've asked you not to. We still have the information. They're just not on the list.
Yeah, that's true too. Yvonne?
Where do we have the information? If we have a list and it's the non-designated list, then we're going to do a second list that we're referring to, which is what Arden brought up. We could start doing various lists for various reasons, but I mean, I like the suggestion of having like a statement that travels with the document, and just say that this is simply a list for purposes of being an inventory, and an inventory lists everything. That's what an inventory is. It has nothing to do with anything personal. It is the township's listing of what the township considers important structures for various reasons. And having a statement that says, that clarifies that it's not the property, it's not intended to place value, more value, less value. You can come up with a statement that it would be just like a blanket statement that, where you come up with that.
Anyone else? Is this something we want to decide on tonight? Do we want to see what else we get for feedback? Any thoughts, Tracy?
Just from a staff report perspective. So for me to this report would be coming July, I think it's 12th to council. So, I mean, I would need to know and look at the timing of our meetings. So it would affect my report on what I would be including or not including, or how I would be wording it. I mean, I know we've talked about it a few times at this committee. I mean, if the committee feels they need to have a little bit more time, I absolutely can respect that, and I can change the date for the non-designated to an August or a September. That's perfectly fine. So you have that option. If it's worthwhile, maybe revisiting some of. I mean, we're not the first committee to face this at all. It's I know it's common for other municipal heritage committees on, I don't know, Nick or Yvonne, on some of the findings that you have, or others with experience on some of the other committees, just so no one thinks that this is an isolated case. It's not at all. How other committees deal with this, and what's maybe provincially regulated as well.
So then I suppose we could have a motion to either look into it further, do more research, or something about reflecting language in the staff report. I'm not sure. Al, I think you had your hand up, and Jen too.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, good. I think someone needs to put a motion. I'm not prepared to move the motion, but someone needs to put a motion, and then we need to decide on it tonight. So we need to decide if we're going to put someone's a property on the list if the owner objects, because we're just, we've had a good lengthy discussion and everybody has had input. So I think we need to make a decision tonight. So someone needs to put a motion forward. Basically dealing with the issue is whether or not we include properties on the list if the owner has expressed an interest not to be included.
Jen?
Just a question before we proceed to a vote. There are changes coming to the Act that will require notification prior to inclusion. Are there any other changes that might give us any kind of direction in this? When they're saying that we need to notify property owners prior to their inclusion, is there any indication of what happens? Is there any guidance of any kind coming in that in those changes?
I can answer that a bit. I've taken a look at the changes to the Act, and related to the properties going on the register, it is just around providing notice to property owners with reasons for adding before the property gets added, and that's all. So it doesn't have a lot of additional detail about what to do or process really. It's just about giving notice, which we already do. Just not too much help there. Tracy?
I was just going to say, from that perspective on notice, when I always, I love to gloat about this committee because we've always gone above and beyond. And I know other municipalities have used some of the documents that we've created as tools to help their committees. And I know I've been on good 20 years, and we've been sending letters to property owners for 20 years. We are far ahead of what the regulations are coming down now.
Mark?
I would make a motion then, if a property owner does not wish to be on the non-designated list, that they not be added to the list.
Okay. Second? Al? So I'm just going to jot that down. Property owner doesn't want to be added, but they don't be added.
That's right.
And I'll second. Any additional thoughts, comments? In all in favor?
Whoops,
All right, Al,
we lost that one.
and opposed?
Oh, you're treading on dangerous ground. You're gonna make an enemy, people.
Yeah, just let's hope that we don't regret this because someone comes back and it bites us. That's my only concern. So let's move on.
Nick,
Um,
oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
So just from a clarification point of view for me, in the staff report, is the committee asking that I include the properties specific that choose not to, once I do have follow-up conversations, if they indeed at the end want to still not be included? Would that,
My thought is that
Or just-
I think we should include the property address and say that they expressed an interest not to be included, just so that there's that transparency through that, we sent letters out, we heard back from these property owners, they don't want to be included. And just so that the staff report does reflect that.
okay, because that's what I've done in the past. I've noted the church and the Phillipsburg property.
Right.
Okay, just so I stay consistent on what I'm
Okay.
doing. Thank you.
That's my thought anyway. Yvonne, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, we have to be careful of privacy legislation. So we really cannot just put someone's name, put it out there without considering that legislation. And so using the addresses as an identifier, because it is the list of addresses with locations, that's consistent for the list. Adding personal names is not part of the list, and it is really, it's an issue of privacy. So we have no right to share the individual's information anyway.
Yeah, you are correct.
Without specific permission to do that.
It just lists the property address.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, then I think it makes sense to continue doing that. And Tracy, I don't know if maybe you should just double check with clerks, but I expect that that'll be fine. As you said, Yvonne, the address is already out there on the list, and we're not adding any personal information. We're just saying which properties expressed a concern with being on the list so that it's in the report.
Yeah, and I'll ensure everything from the committee is following protocol. So
okay,
no worries.
Anything else on that? All right. Well, that was a good discussion. I'm glad everyone could weigh in too. That's good. But I think we can move on to the Cultural Heritage Landscape Project. I just put a quick item in there as follow-up. We had a good meeting last time with Bridget attending and telling us about the project. So I just wanted to remind people to have a look at the website if they haven't, and poke around and see how input can be provided. And Tracy, I know Bridget offered to come back and have a bit more of a working session with us. I think she'd suggest the September meeting. Maybe that would be a good idea.
Exactly, and that would be good timing. I can also just quickly add to the Cultural Heritage Landscape. They also presented at Wilmot Council. And so it's being promoted. It's on wilmot.ca. And if you go there, there's one of the buttons that you can press on. So it was presented to the council as a whole, and the joint project between Development Services and Heritage Wilmot. And it's kind of interesting to see how now it's starting to go, and hopefully encouraging more to go to there. And I do recall there was an article written in a newspaper as well about it. I can see Yvonne smiling. Thank you for that. So Yvonne wrote a great article, which I will scan and email to everybody about it, just giving more promotion about that and becoming involved and active and being heard about this project, which is great. So thank you, Yvonne.
That's good. Thanks, Yvonne. I'm behind on my newspaper reading, so I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, don't worry, I'll scan an email.
So Tracy, did you want to reach out then to Bridget and just see if the September meeting would work? I think we could in the summer, but I think it's probably better for everyone attendance to just have it in September. And then maybe, yeah, I guess who knows if we can actually be in person and have a working session, but we'll see.
Yeah, there's a good possibility we could have a in-person meeting. So
yeah,
imagine that. How would we all be?
I know.
I will be at the cottage. So
Yeah, I'll reach out to Bridget,
Gary.
invite her for the September and as our guest and give us an update and all that. That would be great.
Okay, great. Excellent. I didn't have anything else on that. Anything anyone else had? All right, I think move on. Holland Mills Bridge Plaque. We talked about last meeting. I know Tracy sent around the current version of the text. Just a reminder to provide feedback. And if anyone's super passionate about helping finish up the wording or final design, then I think Tracy was looking for volunteers.
I would love like just one or two people kind of wordsmithing with that on the copy that I had circulated last meeting, just to kind of get it down to what we're looking for. And then we could share it as a committee again, but certainly just need some more support on the text of it. Everything else I could do.
I'll help you with that if you want.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. Thank you, Yvonne. Patty, did I see your hand up? I knew I saw it. Thank you, Patty.
Oh, and Al too.
well, I'm going to be away, but
Oh, okay.
I think I did. I'll just follow what gets sent out. But I think the last meeting I've suggested that we might, and I'm not sure this is possible, but I think it is, that on the plaque that we, since we know after the plaque is made, there's a good chance, some additional information could be available or whatever, since there is, a lot of questions still about the whole Holland Mills community and the mill and everything. If we could have a QR code on there so that if the sign is out of date, it's not out of date, because people could refer to that QR code, and any additional information that we find would then be available through that QR code.
That's a great idea. And I was also thinking on putting the Heritage Wilmot website on, because as we start to revisit the site and grow, where we have designated, non-designated, we'll be adding like probably schools, churches, bridges. So that could be sort of a living document as well.
Well, that's a good idea.
And if you enjoyed, say, the Holland Mills Bridge, then check out Hartman Bridge and check out all the other bridges. I like.
Okay, that sounds good.
Speaking of bridges, there are two bridges which are gone that no plaques have ever been put up. One is the regional responsibility, that's the Bender Bridge. And I thought they were to do that. So we might want to run that by the region. And the other is the Hayesville Bridge. There's nothing about the Hayesville Bridge. I mean, we don't need me to make a decision on that tonight, but I'd just like to get it out there. The Hayesville Bridge was in the top 10 bridges of the Waterloo County Bridge Study. So there definitely probably should be something done about that. And we did own that bridge, even though the region did replace it, because it started off as a regional bridge and shifted to the township partway through, but the region went ahead and did the project since they initiated it. But that's something to keep in the back of our minds that I think we need to address.
Did we have any sort of a policy about that? About like the Hayesville Bridge, that sounds confusing, but I agree. There should be some sort of a reference so that it's consistent across the township, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Tracy, we can do more bridge plaques.
Another thing we could do, since all of the bridges in Wilmot Township were truss bridges at one point, is we could have a whole little, not a plaque at every bridge, but and some of the bridges we probably wouldn't have any information about them anymore because they were replaced so long ago. But we should start a separate spot on our website, just bridges of Wilmot, Bridges
that's
of
a good
Wilmot
idea.
Township, like I said,
That's-
when I
You
wrote for
mean
the,
like my article about the bridges of Wilmot Township?
Yeah.
well, I had a Bridges of Wilmot Township article in the
in
paper.
this week's Wilmot Post?
Yeah,
And
well,
I'm coming to a mailbox to you?
yeah, well, you stole my idea because I originally had one in the Baden Outlook.
Well,
Uh-huh.
I got more positive comment about that Baden Outlook article than I ever would have imagined. And I called it the Bridges of Wilmot Township.
We're gonna have like a bridge fight.
But no, but I mean, it's something
We'll
to,
duke it
you know,
out.
Now,
and it is on the 7 Wonders of Wilmot, right?
the website, I'll just to speak to it, absolutely. So when I was about expanding, listing all the bridges, all that, and I think more, you know, as we get into plaques and people are being more outside, whether it's on trails or physical structures that are there or not there, I think it's really great to connect the community on the Pass Through Our Plaques program. And once we do the Holland Mills one, we're going to be pros on how it's done. And this one's probably the most complicated one because we're trying to work in those pins that are originally from the bridge, and then anything else that can tell a story. So no, I think it'd be great.
Great idea. Okay, I think we can move on. One item under new business was heritage permit for EJs. 39 Snyder, I think it's 39 Snyder's Road West. So I'd sent the drawings around with the agenda package, but it is, they're looking at accessibility. So they want to add a ramp with railings on the west facade. And then they're also looking at replacing one of the windows with a door and one of the doors with a window, keeping the same opening as it looks like. So it's the same size. They have to fill in the bottom of the door to make it a window, but it would be the same size opening otherwise. So I don't know if anyone's had a chance to look at it. I do have the drawing I could share if people want to take a look at it. I just wanted to open it up to comments. Al?
Just a quick question, because I'm very directionally challenged. Which facade are we talking about? Not referring to west, north, east, or south.
The one that's facing the Shinny House.
Okay, so the one facing Mill Street.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the thing is, they're required to have a handicap ramp. So one way or another, right? It's going to be required. So, and it's not a very attractive wall. It's really quite ugly. If you look at the photograph that's sort of included with the plans, I zoomed in and I thought, ooh, that's really ugly. So adding a ramp is really not going to do any damage to the looks of the outside of that building.
Yeah, I think it'll be an improvement. And
maybe kind of cover up some of it by putting a ramp up there, right?
and it'll clean up the facade nicely. I think that was my thought looking at it. Anyone else, Jen?
Just want to confirm that I'm getting this right, because I actually deal much better with north, south, east, and west. The west facing facade.
Yep.
And that's so they're talking about removing where the door is all bricked up and or whatever that was. I assume it was a door at one time, and there's it looks like an AC unit in the picture.
Yeah.
So they'd be removing that and making that the door with the ramp.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, so it's reopening a door essentially that used to exist.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I said replacing a door with a window, but yeah, you're right. It's all blocked in right now.
I think we saw pictures at an earlier meeting where it was a door with a window. Long time ago.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right. Any other thoughts on the proposed renovation? If not, could I have a motion to support the changes? Jen, second by Al, third by Patty. Any other thoughts, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that's carried. I'll prepare a little cover letter back to the applicant just so they have it and it's in everyone's records, and I'll send that off shortly and they can continue. I must say it's a lot of work they're doing on the building. It's gonna look really nice. Not that it doesn't already, but it's gonna look even nicer.
To be fair, this will really improve that particular space on that facade.
It will definitely. It'll give you now pulling out of the castle. Item 7, I think we can move on. Correspondence. I did not have anyone else? No, okay. Move on to number 8, info sharing. I had in the Heritage Act. I don't think I had it in when I sent out the agenda, but I thought of it after. We already talked about the Heritage Act. But there's also, to go along with that, the province is updating the Heritage Toolkit, which is the collection of documents. It's all about different parts of heritage planning and designating properties and all that. And there is a draft version available on the province website. I can send that around if everyone would like. It's just a link on the environmental registry. I forget what they call it now, but whatever the registry is for consultation. So they have that up there. And there's also information about the Heritage Act changes too. So for work, we've been talking to the province just to understand their timing and everything. So they have consultation open for the next little while, I think until early July. And then they're anticipating that the revised Heritage Register, or Heritage Toolkit rather, would be out in the fall sometime. So I'll send that around to everyone just so you have it, you can take a look at it. The documents aren't formatted all nicely yet. I think it's just content. And it is, from what I haven't read everything yet, but what I've read, it's very similar to what's out there now. And as I mentioned, there's not really any change to adding properties to the register. But anyway, it's big news for heritage planning. The last time it was updated was 2005 or 6, so it's due. Any other info sharing, Tracy?
I was just going to ask, yeah, I took a peek at it as well online. I didn't see anything that would, in fact, I think it enhances the how heritage preservation has changed since 2005. I'm hoping that they still print the booklets, you know, it's like a couple little booklets in a sleeve.
It's a nice publication.
And I know we kind of get away from printing and stuff, but it's kind of nice for to have that easy reference to grab. And I know myself and then the clerk's department, they have one as well since they are involved in designations. And but it's just so easy to refer to. So I'm hoping they're still going to do printed copies.
I hope they do too. It is very nice to have it. Anyone else? All right. We have done next meeting July 14th. Tracy, was it the August meeting that we were skipping?
It was going to be July if the committee still wanted to meet, which if we're still, I mean, if people are still okay with it, I mean, we have some projects we're still working on. If we kept the July one, and yeah, we would not be meeting in August.
That's good with me. And everyone else okay with July? All right. Al, I can't remember, are you around or not?
No, a week from tomorrow, I'll be taking my leave.
All right.
So yeah, I'll just, I got access to email, but I don't have a good internet connection. So
okay.
I probably won't join in. The one that I will try to bend over backwards is Bridget, is the meeting Bridget comes to.
Okay.
So, I mean, if there was something, there is a way I could participate. I would just have to drive to a better internet access spot.
You can hang out at the parking lot at your local library.
I think it's the library you go to, isn't it?
That's what everybody does. They go to the Maynooth Library.
Yeah.
Last summer, Tammy spent a lot of time in front of the Maynooth Library Park because you can't get into the Maynooth Library. So yeah, so that's and when the library is open, it's always full of people, and 95% of them are not there looking at a book. They're on the internet.
Awesome. Well,
we have lousy internet.
I would be able, I'm going to be reaching out to Bridget in the next day or so. So I will make sure the committee has lots of notice, especially for planning in the summer coming up. So I'll let you know or let the committee know for whether it's September, October that she can attend.
Okay. Sounds good. Was everything? Motion to adjourn? Oh, all right. All right, well, enjoy the continued nice weather, everyone, and start to summer. So we'll see everyone on July 14th.
I'll
Have a
send
good
you
night.
some